What's up, everybody? It's Rob himself, Rob, like Rob Bank, Liquored Up Kicker, not today. Whatever you want to call me. Coming here, week 2 NFL preview. Putting the picks and fantasy advice all in one shot. Congratulations. Last week, our buddy, friend of the program, Nick Betty Devins, came away with the win in the pick'em, edged me out by 1 pick. And but if you watched our preview, you would have had his picks as well as mine. So could have won your pick'em, could have beat us in the pick'em group with us. I don't know, but let's get some music going. And to recap from last week, I'm pretty happy overall. Had most of the games right. Blew it on a couple of them. I should have trusted Peyton Manning and also the Chargers were the two I wanted to change right before the game and didn't do it. Fantasy-wise, I was very happy with myself. My Ogletree pick, the big surprise of the week, I picked Mike Williams from Tampa Bay, and he actually did come through and scored a touchdown. He wasn't huge on yards, but everybody had pretty much given up on this guy. He's probably almost definitely available in your fantasy league, and you could have got a touchdown out of him. I didn't get a touchdown out of a lot of my guys last week. So, my trusts, 12 out of 15 of my trusts scored at least double digits. Most of them did what they were supposed to do. Had the obvious guys, Matt Ryan, had Foster on there despite the injury concerns. He came through, and also I trusted Carson Palmer, and if you watched the game, it was some late scrap work trying to fight his way back in there, but he threw no interceptions, which is a big deal for Palmer, and he finished with 17 points, which is as much as you can ask for. He's probably a fill-in or you're in a really deep league. My busts, most of them were good. I had Trent Richardson, who, if you saw that game, the whole thing was ugly, but he was awful. Packers running backs, I said not to trust. Benson and Starks. Starks didn't even play, and Benson had 1 fantasy point, I believe. Did a little better in yesterday's game. Also had Andrew Luck in there. People were a little too excited about him before the season. So I think now we're all back down to earth. He's still going to be a good quarterback, just easy on fantasy. Probably only starting 10 or 12 quarterbacks. Even in a 2-quarterback league, then maybe you use him, but that's about it. I did really miss it on Stephen Ridley, though. My apologies on that. He had a real good game. And if Marine's out, the Patriots are really bad at using too many different running backs and not being fantasy trustworthy. But if he's the only one that's healthy and they're getting these early leads, he might not go away. Also, Sanchez, I got a bust on. I kind of misread that entire game. My trust was Fred Jackson. My bust was Sanchez. My lust was Dustin Keller, and none of those were right. My lust column, very proud of my pick. I had Dennis Pitta, the Ravens tight end, as my lust pick, and he went crazy. And I'm pretty sure he's available in just about every fantasy league. I don't know. They still have that Dixon. I don't know if you run out and get him, but proud of myself for thinking he'd come through in that game. I also had Donald Brown, who had a good game despite not getting a ton of carries. I think he is in a good position to be good the rest of the way, at least as a flex player in your fantasy leagues. He is going to get the ball, and if the Colts can stay in some games, he's going to get some more carries, and they won't have to throw the ball the entire time. Also had Danny Amendola as a lust pick, and he hit 7 points up. If you're at a point where you need to start Danny Amendola on your team, 7 points is pretty solid. Same thing with Mike Williams, Tampa Bay. If you're to the point that you need to start these guys that are free agents in a lot of leagues, you have to be pretty happy with 7 points. So anyway, overall, not a bad week 1. Week 2, we got Tampa Bay, who I had last week. I'm not picking them this week. at the New York Giants. There's no way Giants lose 2 games. Tampa looked good against Carolina, but not enough there. Stop the Giants. I do trust in this game Doug Martin. He didn't look like a rookie last week, and as long as this game doesn't get out of hand, it should be much more the same for him. And Blunt didn't take any of his touches away, so that's a positive too. My bust is actually my starting quarterback in my fantasy league, Eli Manning. I don't think he's going to have a bad game. Maybe something similar to last week. He just, Tampa's defense did look good, so they might force him to do some stuff he doesn't want to. And I think he'll be fine just for his standards. I think he's down. If you're in some crazy 8-man, 2-quarterback league, or 18 league, maybe you can bench him. I don't know if you have a good matchup. My lust, I'm gonna parlay the Mike Williams Tampa Bay. I think teams are gonna continue to focus on Vincent Jackson, and they should. And Mike Williams is gonna sneakily have a decent year to the point that he may be at least a wide receiver 3 going forward in fantasy leagues. Next game is Raiders-Dolphins. I'd love to pick the Dolphins. My mom's going with their season tickets, but I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. Not that they showed me a ton, but the Dolphins were painful to watch. The Dolphins, Bills, and Eagles all were painful to watch. In this game, I trust Darren McFadden. He gets the ball plenty, and as long as he's healthy, he's one of the best backs in the league. My bust is all Dolphins. It might be too easy. It might be a softball. Reggie Bush, if this game stays close, I liked what I saw out of him. He should be fine, but I don't think he's going to do anything crazy. My lust is Brian Hartline for the Dolphins. If they do get behind, they're going to have to throw, and even if there's 10 receptions, if he throws 40 times, that means there's got to be some catches in there. And somebody's got to do it. I think maybe Brian Hartline will be the answer. That's a deep one, though. I wouldn't go out and pick him up. Texans at Jaguars. Texans look good. Everybody's picking them to do well this year. I'll take the Texans over the Jaguars. Trust in Arian Foster. He's sick now. It's not the knee or anything else. He has some illness that they're not disclosing. I tried not to. I wasn't sure about him last week and he went crazy, so we're keeping him in. My boss is MJD. It's kind of like Eli Manning. I think he will do fine. You can't bench him. He's better than whoever you have, but I just think that they might get behind and Blaine Gabbert might be forced to throw deeper than the little dump balls to him. So just not an MJD performance, but still a decent game. And my lust, we go Mercedes Lewis. Everyone had a good game last week. Everyone's chalking it up to he's not quite there yet or whatever, but he's still available in a lot of leagues. That's one that you could, if your tight end is hurt or something crazy, he's not awful. You can put him in your lineup. Browns at Bengals. Browns are freaking awful, laughable. Bengals will win this one. Not too worried about what the Ravens did to them. The Ravens are, well, they used to be the Browns, but they're not these guys. My trust is BenJarvus Green-Ellis. If you put up 80 yards and a score, I believe, against the Ravens, imagine what you can do against the Browns. I think they gave Shady McCoy like over 5 yards a carry, and I think Green-Ellis will get in the end zone at least once. My bust again is Trent Richardson. I'm just not seeing it from this guy, and his team's doing him no favors. I think he could be great somewhere else, but he's a Brown. My lust is Massaquoi. He's been the Browns' best receiver. This Greg Little talk this year, I bought into it. I drafted him late in one of my drafts, but didn't do anything last week. Massaquoi had maybe 6 catches or 60 yards. He looks good, and I think they're going to be behind. Just like Jacksonville or Miami, they're going to be throwing. Somebody's got to catch it. It looked like if Wheaton was catching on with anybody, it was Massaquoi, so he's there, but I wouldn't go for Browns unless I had to. Chiefs at Bills. I'm taking my Buffalo Bills. I don't feel great about this one. I wasn't super confident last week, but I do love the Bills. I think they're favored. Don't know why getting beat up by the Jets is worse than getting beat up by the Falcons. I don't know, but go Bills. Trusting Jamal Charles here. Sean Green looked like an NFL running back last week. Jamal Charles is an NFL running back, so he might look like a superstar. My bust is CJ Spiller. It's just because he's ranked number 1 in the ESPN Fantasy League, and people are starting to treat him like it. And he's good, but if the Bills are losing, he's out of it, and it's a lot for him. He's not as big as some other backs. It's going to be a lot of work for him. I hope I'm wrong. My lust is Donald Jones. David Nelson out for the year. The Bills are pretty much living through Stevie Johnson and Scott Chandler. Donald Jones is going to be lined up on the side. They got a rookie, TJ Graham, who mostly, he's still a work in progress, very talented, but Donald Jones should benefit the most from David Nelson being out for the year. Ravens at Eagles. I'm picking the Ravens. Sorry, everybody back home. They look really good. I did hear a stat today, though, on Dan Patrick's show that teams that win at home against teams that win on the road against. It was confusing, but anyway, the Eagles have a chance in this one. I saw them favored somewhere too, so maybe Vic's really going to bounce back. But I have the Ravens. My trust is Ray Rice. I got him in my league, and I think he's the best running back around, most consistent. My busts are Macklin and Deshaun Jackson. The Ravens secondary, the whole defense looked really good last week, and these guys are both hurt, banged up at least. I think they will have some trouble, and that leads to my lust is Jason Avant, who if one of these or both these guys are limited or can't go, Avant usually manages to step in a couple times a year and have some big games. So also if he's lined up as the third receiver, maybe he'll see some open looks depending on what they're doing with the guys on the outside. Saints and Panthers. I thought about taking this upset, but I can't see the Saints playing as bad as they did last week, and the Panthers look awful. Jonathan Stewart comes back. Maybe they'll let the team run. I think D'Angelo Williams had 6 carries for no yards or something. I don't know. Saints win. Drew Brees is my trust. Enough said. My busts are most of the running backs in this. Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram, D'Angelo Williams. These guys all thought they were going to get a share of the carries. It doesn't look like that's the case. Maybe late in the season with injuries, and maybe they'll be touchdown vultures eventually. I don't know. It doesn't look good for these guys right now. And my lust is Greg Olsen. I talked about him last week. He looks good, and it just makes sense. Cam's going to throw to him sometimes, especially with Steve Smith's hurt this week. Questionable right now. I'm not buying all the way in on Brandon LaFell just yet. And Lewis Murphy and whoever else. There's a spot for Olsen to catch plenty of balls. Cardinals at Patriots. Patriots. Not even close. Brady's my trust. My bust is if you're still using Beanie Wells and Ryan Williams, that's my bust. If that's too cheap, I'm gonna go ahead and call him out again. Stephen Ridley. Everybody's doing the same thing with him that they did with Spiller and trying to do to Andrew Luck last week. He's not who he looked like last week. Stephen Ridley is not the number 2 or 3 running back in fantasy. He is good, and he's going to have a lot better year than I expected, but not what you think this week. My lust is Andre Roberts. Cardinals are going to be throwing. He caught 50 yards and a touchdown, I think, last week. I might be wrong about that, but it's a deep sleeper. Like I said, don't go pick him up, but it's more of just for the I told you so factor. Vikings at Colts. I like the Vikings in this game. I could see it going either way. Neither team really wowed me. Colts look better than I expected. Vikings looked a little worse, but you got the X Factor Adrian Peterson, who is my trust. My bust, even though I like him, Donald Brown. I don't think the Vikings got some big guys up front, and I think they're going to use him more, but we'll see. And my loss is Kobe Fleener. If it looks anything like last week, that's where the ball's going. Luck targeted Fleener had more completions to him than any time in any of their college games together. So that did translate into the pros. Redskins at Rams. Taking the Redskins here, but this is one of the upsets that I really could see happening. I would not be surprised at all if the Rams win. I might switch my pick come Sunday. I don't really have too many upsets right now. My trust is Steven Jackson. He's not going to win you your league, but he is pretty steady. I hope he cracks double digits this week. I think he will. That's why I have him on here. But he's definitely good for at least 70, 80 yards most weeks, maybe combined rushing and receiving like last week. My boss is RG3. I think I'm the only person in America. I'm not buying it yet. We're going to have to wait and see on this guy. The Rams picked Stafford all 3 times, including a pick 6. I think maybe I'm alone on this one too, but I think Matt Stafford is a better, right now, NFL quarterback than RG3. We'll see. My lust is another deep sleeper. Aldrick Robinson, the Redskins receiver. Pierre Garçon is still not, well, he's very limited in practice on Thursday. Didn't practice at all on Wednesday. Not very clear what's going on with this foot thing. They said x-rays were negative, but he still isn't going full speed. It's starting to worry me. Santana Moss seems to be nobody. This Robinson was ahead of him last week. So I think that the Redskins will look to this guy to fill in for Garçon if he's out and work opposite Garçon if he's in. Cowboys at Seahawks. Cowboys looked really good first week. Seahawks lost to the Cardinals, and we lost to Skelton and Cobb combination. That's usually the worst case scenario. If one of them catches a good week, that's one thing, but to see both of them and not come out with a victory. Romo is my trust because I don't quite understand how the Cowboys do with running the ball. Murray's good, but they don't quite understand what they're doing there yet. My bust is Russell Wilson. I hope nobody's really starting him, but I just want to emphasize my point that it's a great story. Like the guy, I think he's a good player. Not yet, not a fantasy player right now. And lost is Braylon Edwards. Sidney Rice is questionable. I think it actually helps Braylon Edwards a lot if Sidney Rice is on the field to take up some coverage. He had a few catches last week. If Braylon's looked at as the #1 guy, he may have some issues. But assuming Sidney Rice can go, he's questionable now with a knee. Braylon Edwards could be a possible flex play if you needed to. Jets at Steelers. I'm taking the Steelers. Same as a lot of stuff. The 1 week, I'm not completely sold. I'm sticking to a lot of my original thoughts. The Jets made the Bills look awful. Bills looked awful in the preseason too. I don't know. I think the Steelers, even though they didn't look as good as they should have, the Steelers will still take this one. My trust is actually Mike Williams. Not a very trustworthy dude typically, but if Revis can't play, he's got the concussion. He's still not allowed to hit. He's running and lifting now, and so if he's even not at 100%. And I don't think Revis can stay on one guy the whole game because you have Antonio Brown on one side and Mike Williams on the other side. So I think Mike Williams definitely scores and probably good yardage too. My bust is Mark Sanchez, one of the most picked up players in fantasy this week. I don't buy this yet. He's not as bad as people made him sound in the offseason, but he also shouldn't be starting for your team in week 2 in fantasy. Jonathan Dwyer is my lust. Tomlin basically came out and said he loves Dwyer and hates Redmond. And anybody who watched the game definitely hates Redmond if you tried to start him last week. So I haven't heard about Mendenhall yet. I think it's iffy. I think it's another week before before we see Mendenhall. And so I think Dwyer gets the bulk of the carries. And if C.J. Spiller is the #1 fantasy running back after week 1 against the Jets, I think Jonathan Dwyer can come close to matching those numbers. Titans at Chargers, this is another one where I thought about taking an upset, but the Titans have some injury questions, and Chris Johnson of last year and last week, and not the Chris Johnson of old. So he's scaring me too. I'm taking the Chargers at home. Antonio Gates is my trust. The Patriots tight ends both scored last week. Gates may not quite be on their level right now, but he's close as anybody else in the NFL. And so he should do fine. My Boston Chargers running back situation. Everybody thought it was Ronnie Brown last week, and Brinkley got more carries. Everybody thinks it's Brinkley this week. Who knows what's going to happen? There's 4 guys trying to take one spot of carries, and you got a good passing game for the most part. I don't think the Chargers need to rely too heavily on the run. Get back soon, Ryan Matthews, and maybe the situation will change. My lust is Kendall Wright. Right now, Nate Washington and Kenny Britt are both nursing injuries and trying to get back on the field. If Kendall Wright has to be the #1 guy, I kind of worry about him getting most of the coverage. They might shut him down right away, but if he ends up playing with one of these guys opposite them and is the most healthy guy, I think Locker has to look his way, and I think he will have a decent day. In the Sunday night game, maybe I'll get through this one a little easier. We have the Lions at the 49ers. 49ers, I haven't totally jumped on their bandwagon and sending them to the Super Bowl, but that is one of the things from last week that I do take a little more seriously. They looked very good and made the Packers look not so good. So I am taking the 49ers here. The Lions were disappointing last week, so if Stafford didn't get his act together, they are going to have trouble against this defense. My trust is Frank Gore. He's been doing it for years. I mean, he gets banged up, but he should be all right. They have a good D-line, but I think Gore will be fine in this game. Start him. Keep him in your top spot or second spot, wherever you have him. My bust is Kevin Smith. He's due for an injury. He didn't have one last week, and he overachieved last week. He's good. I think he really is the guy that should be the guy in Detroit if he stays healthy. Best is as injury prone or more than he is. We don't know about LaShore yet. So Kevin Smith is the closest thing they have to a consistent running back, but not this week. And my lust is Nate Burleson. Didn't really get why everyone thought Titus Young was jumping him in the depth chart in the offseason, and based on last week, he hasn't. Burleson is still there, and I think the 49ers, with this newfound offense, will have a decent lead, and Stafford will be throwing, and he's a lot better than the other guys that I said. They're going to be forced to throw a lot, so I think he'll be able to find. Megatron's hurt right now, but if Megatron's playing, I like Burleson playing on the other side to have a decent game. Broncos at Falcons. This one's real tough, and I'm picking against Peyton 2 weeks in a row, and 2 weeks in a row, it's the toughest pick for me to make. But I'm going to take the Falcons at home. They just look like a well-oiled machine. Now, Roddy White is questionable, and Michael Turner did basically next to nothing in week 1, but I still think the Falcons impressed me right out of the gate compared to the Broncos, who also looked very good. Matt Ryan is my trust. Not necessarily 31, whatever he put up leading the way for quarterbacks and I think everybody in week 1. He might not be the #1 fantasy player this week, but definitely a start worthy, help you win your game worthy game. Bust, Julio Jones. Don't get me wrong, he'll probably have a decent game. He just won't have the game he had last week. And I think if Roddy's able to play, If Riley doesn't play, I knock Julio off this because he'll get a lot more balls. But if they're both playing and Champ Bailey is focused on Julio Jones, it opens up Roddy White, and Julio may have as big an impact on the game, but it might not reflect the stats. And my lust is Eric Decker. I know he's on a lot of teams. Everybody drafted him decently early too, middle rounds. But he didn't do it last week, and Demaryius Thomas had a great game. So I think people are jumping ship where they were sure who was going to be the better one of the two. And I think it's going to be a messed up situation. Not necessarily bad, but it's going to go back and forth. It's going to be hard to judge. And I think this week will be Decker's week. And my Ogletree pick of the week is Andrew Hawkins, wide receiver from Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Browns are awful, and the Bengals are going to score, and why not this guy? He had a decent game last week, and Bengals got a couple young, fast guys they like in there. I think this is the guy who is going to come out, other than A.J. Green, out of their crop of wide receivers, to be a decent guy. I'm not expecting Ogletree numbers, but I think Joe Hayden's out. They're going to have to put a lot of emphasis on guarding A.J. Green, and it's going to open it up for the other guys. And that's it. Join the Pick'em group if you didn't already. If you're in there, make your picks. I saw some people didn't get all their picks in. Other than that, Bruce's. Go Bills.